I walked toward the train station using the main street, dragging along the mama cycle that I brought really cheap online for commuting to school. Tokyo was filled with people even late at night. In particular, the area around the train station near my house was so close to many universities, so there seemed to be no difference in the amount of people milling about from noon to night. Right around where I could see the station, I almost ran into a pair of girls and apologized. One shot me a "who's this punk" look, but the other smiled and said, "I'm sorry." I apologized once more. That was all there was to it, but it filled my heart with joy. Indeed, a fateful meeting was lying in wait for me. And a girl, no less. This might be good. The bizarre events tormenting me at that house must surely be a build-up for the happiness that awaited. In the future, I would look back at that and laugh it off. I felt less burdened when I thought of it that way. And this way I wouldn't have to move out. Moving costs would be painful for me, given that I was receiving no aid from home. The offline meeting was fun, too, but I can't keep complaining. I mumbled to myself, and I finally straddled the bike. I turned completely around and decided to return home for the first time in a few days. No one that came to the offline meeting today said anything about the house that grants wishes. If you look at it from another angle, it means it can't possibly be a ghost incident. It's a bit shameful as the original poster, but it's all good in the end, right? What would have happened if I'd dragged people over to my house and it turned out that there were no ghosts? I'd just be a laughingstock. Having finished arming myself with logic, I faced the soft, comforting night breeze and powered the pedals. I'd recovered to the point where I may have even hummed. However, I noticed it when I was just about to re-enter the main street from the arcade in front of the train station. There was a strange, abnormal feeling on the back of my left foot. It was like I was constantly stepping on gum, so I stopped my bike and took my sneaker off right there. And then I lifted my left foot a bit, looked at the sole, and froze. All of my good feelings were extinguished, and I felt my blood freezing. On the back of my sneaker was engraved the number 4. Damn it, what the hell, schema? The countdown was continuing. I pushed the mama cycle along with mostly a half step, and every person passing gave me a strange look owing to my frantic look. But it paid them no heed. I threw away the sneaker with 4 engraved on the spot. I couldn't continue wearing such an eerie thing. The cold of the concrete and the scattered pebbles pierced my feet through my socks, but I didn't care. Why, when, was 4 carved into the back of my sneaker? What was going to happen when the countdown ended, and how would I be able to escape from this terror? I had no idea, but in any case I kept running. People in fancy clothing looked at me and laughed, but I didn't care. I just wanted somewhere with a warm atmosphere. Where? Where could that be? Eventually I found a discount shop open late into the night after passing through the arcade, and I jumped in. A stupidly bright theme song was playing in the background. The massive products were incredibly cheap, and I sang along with a simple, repetitive melody. Flamboyantly dressed girls avoided me as I stood there leaning against a shop holding cosmetics and mumbling to myself. An employee asked me, "Are you unwell?" And I finally realized that my left foot, which was only covered by socks, was throbbing. When I looked, perhaps I'd stepped on a shard of glass on the way, as I saw the socks that had been cut and bloodied. I bought bandages, socks, and the cheapest sneaker, and cleaned the wound in the bathroom. I cleaned the back of my foot, placed the bandage, and wore the new socks. The cheap sneaker had a shoddy design and wasn't very comfortable, but it was better than being barefoot. It was unnecessary expense, but I felt comforted. I was afraid of being in the bathroom alone, so I returned to the inside of the store and took deep breaths as I wandered around the store as if window shopping. What should I do now? I thought, but I could come up with no answer. At some point, I'd just begun standing in front of a show window absent-mindedly, and the employee from before asked if anything was wrong again, so I left the store. There was no helping it, so I began heading towards the net cafe I'd been using before, but it was already full. I peeked into the nearby karaoke box, but there was even a line spilling out onto the street. I tried wandering around several stores, but they were all the same. Come to think of it, it was Saturday night. There would be no openings until the first train. However, I couldn't think of any other place to go. I wandered around the station while dragging my bike, and the police would shoot me suspicious looks. I almost felt like it would be more comforting to be arrested, but some level of common sense remained in me, so I turned back to the main street. The headlights of cars on Tsukaichi Street illuminated me as they passed by. Normally the cars just looked like fuel-consuming devices, but today I felt consoled by them. It was invigorating to look upon things that could be scientifically explained. However, I may have been at my limits. This was no bit different from being homeless. I had no one I was intimate with enough in Tokyo where the light never dims. I had no place to go, and I was running low on funds. I spontaneously looked at the night sky, but just as there were no clouds, there were also no stars. It was just an obsidian dimension that stretched down as if painted. Perhaps I could call my sister and borrow some money in the morning, and then go back to Shizuoka. Tokyo was too much for me, which was something humiliating to say, but this was too unexpected. I'd imagine most people would have trouble with such a case too. Mother, I'm sorry. You supported me with so much in coming to Tokyo. Then I saw a strong light at the end of the night street. When I looked up, I realized I'd come back to the family restaurant. I see, this was also open 24 hours. That was enough to make me feel like I'd found a million allies, and my knees almost buckled. The drink bar here was cheaper than the net cafe, and there were plenty of people about due to it being Saturday night. I should have just stayed here from the start. Ha ha ha. I laughed to myself dryly, and I must have been very hard to approach with how I looked. Anyways, I left my mom's cycle at the bicycle lot for the family restaurant, and I then was about to enter when I recoiled. There was something even more bizarre that made me not want to get any closer. Outside the big glass window to the store, inside the fern thicket that seemed to have been planted to cover the store, was a girl dressed in full black. She wore a black long coat even though it was spring, and her long hair that stretched down her back and skirt and her boots were also pure black. Yet her skin was abnormally white, and she was crouched in darkness, so it looked like only her face was floating. What is she doing? She was standing in the middle of the thicket and almost pressing her face against the glass as she stared into the store. It was so creepy I was about to back off. But then she slowly turned to face me. Her face was shockingly white, and the face was perfectly aligned. She was so perfect that I felt like saying she must have been a construct, like a giant bisque doll that had accidentally been left there. That's the impression she gave. A night-colored girl. Unexpectedly, those words popped into my head. Those were the colors of the girl's eyes. Maybe it was because of the lighting, but it felt like an inordinately large proportion of her eyes seemed to be taken by her irises, and that under her long eyelashes they seemed to have a jet black glimmer. Below her straight-cut front hair, they shone a dark color as they glazed upon me. "Are you?" My mouth naturally spoke. "Yoichi?" The girl silently nodded. Yoichi isn't a living person. Those that meet Yoichi die 7 days later. Offline meetings that Yoichi attends end in terror. What I'd heard earlier floated around my head as I stared at the girl in front of me. 7 glasses were laid out on the table in front of Yoichi, ranging from iced coffee to cola to orange juice to Japanese tea, creating her own drink bar. Aren't you supposed to just take one at a time?" I said to her in an exasperated tone, but she replied, "As long as I drink everything, there should be no problem." And she kept her eyes on the glasses as she drank one after another. She drank orange juice, then iced coffee, then warm Japanese tea, cola, and she faithfully repeated the order a number of times, sometimes adding rooibos tea and black tea and melon soda as an accent. I didn't know if there was some meaning to the order, but when she did it, it felt like it was some sort of traditional religious ritual, which was odd. I took a look again at the girl who went by Yoichi. She was probably still in high school. I realized when looking at her under a brighter condition that she had immense beauty. However, the problem was her eyes. Those eyes that seemed like glass beads seemed to be looking somewhere and yet also seemed to be looking nowhere. It felt as if she did not share the same world, creating a special barrier about her. Hers was not like that of a princess in her high perch. Rather, if anything, it was like that of a witch's apprentice. "Hey," I asked the girl dressed in black as she busily rifled through the drinks. "Why didn't you come to the offline meeting?" "I was there." "No, but when everyone was around, you didn't come." "I was there, right there the whole time." She pointed towards the other side of the window where I had first found Yoichi. In other words, in the bush outside the store. "There, with her face pressed against the glass?" "Then what, from 11 until now you were there the whole time?" "Yes," she nodded, and as I stared at her pale face, I thought, this girl, is she what you'd call psychotic? It was already past 2 a.m. The stick to glass for 3 hours from 11 p.m. must have creeped out the employees. When I turned back toward her, a different waitress from before was saying something to Yoichi. Her expression was contorted in an extremely mean manner, in a much more contemptuous manner than they'd shown me. I stood up, having felt like I'd seen something detestable. I immediately walked toward them, declaring I wanted a drink bar as well, and then headed straight towards the counter to grab a drink. I don't know why I felt so irritated. Probably it was because I felt like I'd been laughed at as a fellow occult lover. I filled my glass to the brim with ice, then pressed the button for iced coffee. Now then, what to do from here on out? As I watched the hot iced coffee melt through the ice, I thought, I could not go home, and the countdown continued. Furthermore, I had run into the heresy class occult girl from Ikaigabuchi, and now for some reason I'm alone with her at a family restaurant late at night. In a way, it was comforting that I was not alone, but given that it was an occult girl with strange urban legends attached to her, I was left with complex emotions. "You like bad coffee?" When I returned to my seat, Yoichi said that. "What?" "I asked if you liked bad coffee. The coffee here is unsatisfactory." I looked at her 7 glasses again and noticed that only the iced coffee had hardly been sipped. Information that you can gather beforehand should be processed before you act. Yoishi's neat, logic-filled words annoyed me, so I replied with some nastiness. "Then allow me to gather information. Why did you come to today's offline meeting?" "Because I was interested." "In the house that grants wishes? Why are you interested in that house? Sounds are probably just structural groans, and the engravings might just be my mistake, right?" I said exactly what Karasi told me in a self-deprecating manner, and Yoshi simply said, "Of course," without any hint of retorting. "Then why?" When I read about that house on the forum, I felt a bit of an oddity. Her low whispering tone gave me goosebumps. There are countless stories of oddities overflowing on the internet, but most of them are fake. Real ones, though, they have a scent that cannot be hidden. Something hot bubbled forth from the bottom of my stomach at those words. Having a psycho believe you isn't really something to be pleased about, but I was, to be frank, happy that there was someone that would finally listen to the source of my fears. Indeed, that place is real. I was in shambles already, but the bottom of my shoe had been carved into. "Hey, what is that? Is it a ghost? Are you the type that can see them? What do you mean by having a scent that cannot be hidden?" I couldn't stop myself from blurting out questions, and Yoichi stared at a glass of orange juice as she flatly answered. "First question first. It may not be a ghost." "What?" "Next question. It is not that I can see everything." "Final question. A feeling. Real abnormalities always have a strange sense of not fitting together." Yoichi switched out of her previous dazed posture and began talking. "Strange phenomena happen. People related to it become afraid. When you investigate, you find out that someone committed suicide there. I won't say that such a neatly placed together stories are all fake. However, the real fun ghost stories surpass such things. There's a feeling as if something important has been skipped over. Being able to fill in the gap is the single theory of the other side. In other words, what's the eerie sound that keeps happening at my house? Why are there numbers being written, and why are they always going down? What happens to me when the numbers run out? I subconsciously stood up as I shouted, "What's going to happen to me?" The storm went silent, and everyone was looking at me. Embarrassed a bit, I sat back down. However, I couldn't figure out what was going on. I didn't know what to do anymore. I was a bit ashamed of myself and scratched my head when Yoichi quietly mumbled, "You are the one that posted that." I looked up and Yoishi's cold, dark irises were mysteriously glimmering. I nodded and explained what had just happened. That 4 had already arrived, and that it had been carved into the bottom of the sneakers I had been wearing myself. I explained that while trembling. "How does someone carve that? Did something possess me all the way from home?" I was almost in tears when I asked, and then I recoiled. Yoishi's eyes, which were once like glass beads, had seemed to harbor life. And then she suddenly placed a finger to my nose and said, "Hey, close your eyes." "Huh?" Her pretty face peered into me, gazing into my eyes. Her face had come so close to me that, to be honest, my heart started racing. Why do I have to close my eyes? Just do it. My heart thumping, I did as she said. I closed my eyes tightly. It felt like some inappropriate imagination had drifted in, so I frantically worded that away. Imagine. Her lips seemed to move at the back of my eyes, commanding, "You are standing at the entrance of your house." Her frosty yet somewhat kind voice forced me to stand before my house. As detailed as you can, imagine yourself standing at the entrance of your house. As if controlled by those words, I imagined myself standing in that house in the darkness. Black, the sharp image of that mountain cottage, the reddish-brown roof, the mountain cottage, the atelier the architect had built for himself. The walls were faded in a nice fashion and covered by vines to the second floor. The white paint had slightly chipped off the wooden windowsills. The first floor was all a garage, and the second and third floors were built with his living quarters. It had no kitchen. I rented a house of 30,000 yen, and at night it began making a strange sound, and the next morning a number would be carved somewhere. My legs began trembling, but I held them down with my hands. "Alright, when you have imagined it, place your hand on the doorknob." "Alright. Now open the door." I opened the door. My shoes were sprawled out on the fire. When I'd rushed out of the house, I'd kicked the leather shoes out of the way, but my feet refused to go further. I felt someone in the house, even though no one should be in it. The thick, sticky air seemed to make me feel that way. No, I didn't want to step forward, even if this was just my imagination. Seemingly noticing my emotions, Yoichi said, whispering, "Don't worry. Slowly move in. Take off your shoes as usual and step in. When you step in, I don't care what order, but open every window in your house. Neatly, one by one, without leaving a single one." "Window? Why windows?" I thought that, but I heeded her. I went by the window in the living room, unlocked it and opened it. And then from there to the Japanese-style room I was using as a bedroom. I unlocked and opened the window. Then from the Japanese-style room to the bathroom, opened. To the bath, opened. Then I progressed to the third floor. There were 2 on the third floor, by the veranda and next to my desk. I unlocked and opened both. I'm done. And now close the windows in reverse order. Huh? Close them in order from the last one you opened. Having no other choice, I did as she said. The window on the 3rd floor by the desk, veranda, then down to the 2nd floor, and the bath, toilet, Japanese style room, living quarters. I closed them all. Yes, done. Now open your eyes, said Yoishi's voice, and I opened my eyes, and the light from the bright fluorescent lamps flooded into my eyes. I had paid no heed to them before, but the bright pop music from within the store also came into my ears. Right, this was a family restaurant. I rubbed my eyes strongly when Yoichi asked me, "How was it?" "What do you mean, how was it? What was the point of this?" "Was there anyone in the rooms?" My hair stood at the words. There was. That was on the landing on the stairs between the 2nd and 3rd floors. A middle-aged man wearing ashen-colored clothing seemed to have been there, immobile, with an emptyish face as he watched me over my every action with his staring eyes. I could never look straight at him, but he was always appearing at the edge of my sight. There was, wasn't there? Yoshi's black eyes dazzled with some sort of happiness. "Is it someone you know?" "I don't know. I've never seen him before." "No. Could that be? To imagine someone that I'd never met before?" That house still remained thick within my mind as Yoshi's joyful voice echoed through the image. Scared. I looked, and Yoshi had come close enough to me that I could feel her breath. "Hey, are you feeling scared right now?" "Scared. Or rather, your eyes that look like they'll eat everything scare me. Tell me more. What kind of person?" I took a deep breath and explained as I tried to stop myself from trembling. A gray worn suit. I didn't remember a necktie. The suit seemed a bit big, but that may have been because the man was thinned. He had white hair, and I couldn't remember the face. The hair was grown a bit long without any care. He wore black shoes. And Yoichi was rubbing her chin, going, After some silence and glancing about at nothing with her eyes, she looked at me once more. "Hey, how about we go?" "What?" "To your house, now." Why did this happen? It was a night with a beautiful moon, and I was dangerously pedaling the mama cycle. I passed through the residential area to the north of the train station near the family restaurant, then continued west along the Grooved River. The Grooved River was called Shimakawa and was one of the rivers that flowed into the Tamagawa waterworks. This river gradually curved northeast and headed towards the area I lived. Every time my bike bounced off the bumpy road, Yoishi's body pressed against mine as she sat behind me. I could feel the slight inflation of her breasts along my back through my jersey, and every so often I had misplaced thoughts of how we looked like a nice couple. However, what was hanging onto my back was a psycho girl dressed entirely in black. Her arms wrapped around my waist were oddly cold. Aren't girls supposed to have a higher body temperature? Like soft, warm, and with a nice scent? However, I could hardly feel any heat from Yoichi, who was sitting at the rear of the seat of my bicycle. If it were to turn out that only I could see her, I wouldn't even be surprised. That's how far away from a date this nighttime bicycle rendezvous was. The residential area became distant, and in its stead became fields. The city lights became dim, and it felt like the number of stars increased, and the scent of grass became stronger. We were much closer to my home. Quite rural. Shut it. That was my response to Yoshi's line after some period of quiet. I don't mean it in a bad way. I didn't realize Mrs. Shino still had such a place. That's why I figured the rent would be low. I vented a bit of my feelings of self-deprecation. Houses became very scarce, and after passing by several old temples, we entered an area dense with trees. By following this narrow path, we would arrive at that house. To be honest, I don't want to go at night. When I said that behind me, it only happens at night, so we should go at night. Yoichi readily replied. A very sound argument. For a while, we remained wordless until Yoichi asked, "What was your wish?" "Huh?" "Because you're painstakingly living in the house that grants wishes, aren't you?" "Painstakingly, or rather I just had no money." "Nothing special, I just hoped that my family's business would go well, that's all," I answered. "Surprisingly, you think of your family," Yoshi commented without giving any trace of emotion. "Surprisingly is pretty harsh," I began replying, but then we saw that house beyond the black forest. That. Yeah. Looking over it again, I was amazed at how I rented such a house. Looking at it now, no matter who looked at it, it completely looked like a haunted house.